right, welcome to Pass the Mic for Friday, December 30th, one of the last days of 2022, episode 54. Mike Pihoti here on Zoom with my good friend Mike Gervasi.
So open your eyes, lend us an ear. We want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. You know that one.
I do know that one. That's going to be Run DMC.
All right. So
Christmas and Hollis.
Mandy Scheffler will appreciate that then.
I do know some Run DMC, and I'm a huge diehard fan. So, and we did play that at a basketball game recently. So during the timeouts.
Right.
Well, there we go. What a great way to wrap up the year. I'm 2 for whatever.
2 for 50 something. Well, 2 for 30 something.
I'd get a $10 million MLB contract if that was my batting average.
But you know what? You're better. So listen to this. Speaking of 2 for, it just reminds me. The Pistons lost the game Monday night.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw. Now, not only did the Clippers throw in the white flag,
they gave up.
They gave up. But in 12,800, I think it was 75 games since 1996, a team has had that kind of lead or more. Only 2 times did the opposing team win.
And I'm curious if in the other time, like the team gave up, like the bench players came in and did this.
Yes.
Did they ever put the starters back in regulation, or did the bench?
They did. Well, some of them. Their best players, Paul George.
Did they play in overtime?
Yes. I think they brought back all the regulars for overtime. But at the end of regulation, for the last possession, they brought Paul George back, and they actually gave him the ball. He ended up distributing it, and then they hit a shot to tie it. So yeah, they did.
I think we're gonna be able to get to see that Pistons game this year still with low cost.
I think pretty easily, yes.
So we'll have to start looking at games. We want to apologize for last Friday. The week got away from us, in all honesty. I had a car issue which took up most of my afternoons and evenings. Then I had put on an event Thursday, which was a big event, which actually I thought there might be a chance I'd be able to record afterwards, and I just didn't have the energy. And we'd also found out that we had a snow day that afternoon, so you really had to make sure you packed everything up. So right. I didn't want to leave anything at work. You know that feeling. If you leave something in there that you desperately needed over the break. So we apologize. We know our listeners. But we are here with one before the break. I have to give a huge shout out, and your friends will be a little annoyed probably, to the Pate family and Elizabeth Pate. Back a few episodes ago, we talked about dream gifts, right? And I sort of mockingly joked around about a PS5,
Yeah.
What do I get at my alumni picnic with the principal, which was a great event. We had over 30 student council alumni come back, my favorite event of the year, right up there with graduation, but I get to see all these student council members come back. We didn't have COVID restrictions, and my current council, in partnership with my wife through Elizabeth Pate, got me a PS5, which I've been doing a lot of gaming so far on this break. So huge shout out.
Yeah, let me give them one too. They brought me my favorite beer,
family friendly beer,
as well, not alcoholic, as well as a hip hop book, and then an unmentionable item, which Mr. Chris Pate was mocking me for my beer choice. I didn't realize it was less than masculine to drink white chocolate craft beer, but whatever.
Oh my goodness!
Yes.
Sounds like a headache the next morning.
No, not that. This is not too heavy. It's good stuff. So it's actually from a brewery in Grand Haven. But also I want to, Elizabeth was really touched by my last rap choice, the late great DMX, Slippin', and she was really she really thanked me for that. It was like a morning where she, a parent's morning, you know what I mean? We all know what that means. She was having one of those days, and that song really caught her. And while we're on the previous show, I didn't interrupt you, did I?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So apparently I said Michael Badger for my mic.
Okay.
They're the Lions, and I'm sure we'll talk about the Lions here, but his name is Michael Badgley. I don't know if I had Wisconsin on my mind.
Oh my goodness. Maybe we were talking about Jalen Franklin or something.
Yeah, maybe. Max caught that. Speaking of Max, Todd Bailey. Now, I don't know how accurate this is completely, but he stalled his annual trip to the north from South Carolina so he could listen to our Pass the Mic, and we didn't have it.
I asked Avon about this at the holiday party, and she said this is totally a rumor that Max is just trying to stir the pot.
Okay.
But he was still stranded without a new episode, so we apologize.
Okay, Max being Max. Okay.
But no, it was a crazy last week, basically, in general. I think about it. We talk about the days. We talked about the previous gift episode. all those elementary teachers, maybe they missed out on all those gifts because they didn't
Oh
have the day
man,
of the snow day.
that's true. Well,
Hopefully
you know
they
what?
brought hopefully they brought some of them in on that Thursday.
Well, or it gives them something to look forward to after the new year, right?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of gift cards and mugs to use in
Yeah,
January. So,
yeah.
speaking of Mike of the Week, it's my turn.
All right.
And if you remember, we're going back 2 weeks because we didn't have an episode. But I talked about the Janet Yellen was my hot Mike take, so it
Yeah,
made me think of I'm going to go back and we're going to do some 60 Minutes connection. How about the great Mike Wallace
Mike
of six,
Wallace.
great journalist.
Yeah,
Born in 1918, died at 93 years of age, lived a great life. If you hit the nines, if you hit the 9 zeros, you've lived a great life in my book.
yeah.
Heck, I'd be happy to hit the 80s. In 2012, you know where he went to college?
I do not.
U of M grad. He's a U of
I
M
assumed
grad,
you were going there. Yeah,
U of M Ann Arbor, a Michigan man. Very, I don't know what he would say about this current era. His son, Chris
yeah.
Wallace,
Chris
who sort
Wallace. Yeah,
of was the face of Fox News until he couldn't be the face of Fox News anymore because he was
yeah.
trying to, just be a journalist,
Right.
and they ran him off. But I think Mike Wallace goes down as one of those outstanding journalists that you could never, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, did an outstanding job. Andy is a grad of U of M and lived a great long life, and his son continues to do good work. And then, of course, the face of 60 Minutes.
So I got to tell you, speaking of 60 Minutes, he did. So Mike Wallace really brought the Nation of Islam in general, but more specifically Malcolm X to the forefront of American. I don't know if pop culture is the right word, but to the common American who had, to them it was kind of a fringe movement. And he got an exclusive interview with Malcolm X when Malcolm X's home was firebombed, right before he was assassinated. And I was on, just kind of messing around on YouTube the other day. It's funny you mentioned him because he did a 60 Minutes interview with, current Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, and this is from 2000, but I just watched this the other day, where Louis Farrakhan actually kind of apologizes for whatever role he might have played in Malcolm X's assassination. He really doesn't come out and say he did, but to
Yeah.
Malcolm X's daughter. It was in 2000, and man, this was like riveting TV. So just kind of bring up some 1960s history with Mike Wallace into the present, relatively present. But it's just funny you mentioned him because like I said, I just watched this. Couldn't have been
Yeah, and
more.
he worked well into his later years too. So he
Yeah,
lived a full life and worked a full life. So
sure,
a well-deserving Mike to go
for
up
sure.
on our board. So as we draw into the end of 2022, as I posted, I'm not a big resolution guy. To me, you can set a goal anytime. We talked about this in my leadership skills class before we left for the break, that you don't need it to be December 31st to have resolutions. You should be setting goals throughout the year. And goals are actually better to set anyway. They can be smaller, they can be obtainable. You can check them off and work towards larger goals within them. So I don't really like doing resolutions, but it's that time of year. So I figured, what is your and my education related resolutions for the calendar year 2023? As we said in many of the episodes leading up to this stretch of September to December was a pretty rough stretch for many of us in education. We may have thought some things or did some things that are out of norm for us. So do you have a resolution for yourself in your professional scope as an educator for 2023?
Yeah, for sure. So, when we come back, we basically have, for all intents and there's 3 weeks, but for all intents and purposes, it's much less than that. First off, we have Martin Luther King holiday off that Monday. And then final exams, which means, anybody that's in teaching knows, especially at the secondary level, the last couple of days before finals aren't really, you're not getting in any content. You're reviewing for the final.
Yep.
So really what happens is when you start to look at this last, let's say 8, 9, 10 days, you're like, okay, I got to get to this X, Y, Z, and as a teacher, you run into this issue all the time, but you really hit it head on at the end. So my resolution is to not have to go through X, Y, Z, because when you do that, if your goal is just to get through content, you're really not, as a teacher, understanding if the kids have learned it or not. And so if I do that, I know my kids aren't going to be learning. So my resolution is just to get through what I can with the kids learning at the highest optimal rate without having to check all the boxes. So that's
And not let it stress you out.
right, because it can be.
Yeah, I'm sure, especially with when you are working within a department and there's
right,
common exams and that sort of
right,
thing.
right,
Just so that everyone knows, because every school is different. We're on a semester schedule, For the most part, you could have totally new classes next semester. You could have totally different classes. You're definitely going to have different kids. Some of, like I know my son's schedule, he has this person for world history now. He has someone totally different in
Sure.
semester B for world history. The same for his bio class. Some classes are the same teacher. It just depends on your guys' schedule and numbers.
Right, right.
So you're not seeing the same block of
No,
kids in semester
no.
two. Very few teachers do, depending on the, certain subjects and electives do, but some don't. Most people in our building, it's a totally clean slate. So it's basically once that date in January hits, you're chopped. It's new. It's a new thing.
Right.
For me, what my resolution, education wise, and it can almost be personal wise too, is I carry around a day planner. I'm really good about writing in it and setting stuff up. But the minute the week starts going to hell, and we all have this, I'll use that example of last week when I got the flat in the tire and I had to get a car repaired. It gets set aside,
Yeah.
and basically I start winging it with my time management, with my planning, and my resolution is that I'm not bad about getting it set up and planning out a week and getting it situated. I need to stop chucking that stuff to the side when the first little thing goes wrong and
Right.
trying to wing it. Because what ends up happening, it snowballs and gets worse and worse. Whereas if I were just to stick to that and say, okay, we have this little curveball here, I need to be flexible and then still get this. I won't forget. There were things I forgot last week. The podcast is one thing that got pushed aside. Christmas gift shop, other things got pushed aside, and I got to make sure that I do a better job with that. And that is an education related thing because every Sunday, and I don't know about how you do in Schoology, but in my Schoology, I go into the announcement section and I lay out the week for my advisory, for my library kids, and for my leadership skills and post that out.
Mm-hmm.
85% of the time that works and we stick to that. But there's that 15% where a curveball gets thrown. And
Right.
that we've talked about that, about
Right.
the part about being flexible.
Sure.
I need to, when things start going wrong or when the first curveball comes, is I need to be like, okay, I have these plans still. I can just alter and change things and not just ignore it and try to wing it. And that's what I find myself doing that a lot in November and December, and I wasn't happy with myself for it. I was good in September, October, and I think part of that was because homecoming kept me on track and it kept me focused. And then all of a sudden, I started saying, okay, I can wing it. And just as a time management skill, it's not a good way to do things because you end up other areas start lacking. And that's definitely my resolution. And I guess that could be a personal one too, because I have a work side to that and a personal side
Sure.
to it, and both things suffer. And because there's going to be curveballs, we know that. We saw the
Yeah.
snow day on Friday.
Right. It's
We know
life.
that
I
what,
mean,
yeah,
just like life.
we know there's going to be weather coming up between now and the end of February where there's
Sure.
going to be a day, where something comes up. So all of that stuff's important. So two very good resolutions. And again, I know you do a great job in the classroom getting to as much as you can, but like with everything else, there's curveballs. Things pop up
Absolutely.
and on there. So
And maybe the listener can hold you to that, like comments here and there on our
yeah,
page.
yeah.
Mike, are you
Did you
yeah.
stress about it? Am I
Right.
still looking at my, it's not a yearly plan. It's a school year planner. So it goes August to August. So it's not even like it's a brand new one I don't do the calendar year. I do the school year
Right.
type planner. So we'll see. All right. Overrated, underrated came up this week for a couple of reasons. You reached out to me about you wanted him to do some things at your house. I saw all kinds of videos, the horror of, and I'm not joking or laughing about this, but I can't imagine a worse thing. And again, this is my TikTok addiction. So many people that woke up to like frozen pipes and like pipes bursting in their house. I mean, it's not even like it was a bad, like sometimes this happens because, a valve goes bad. I mean, these people are home. It got so cold. It happened to a neighbor of ours.
Mhm.
I got worried about my plumbing on my outside walls because last Friday and Saturday, I had the worst I had. I had some cans of Diet Pepsi explode. I had a can
Oh
of Diet
yeah.
Pepsi explode in my garage, covered my daughter's car with it, and then one exploded in my fridge in the garage. It got so cold
Jeez.
in the fridge out in the garage, and
Yeah.
if that's the worst that I had to deal with
Yeah.
compared
Right.
to, I mean, have you seen like what happens like when some of these pipes burst in a house?
Oh,
It's
apparently something happened to a friend of mine's house, and it ended up he has water everywhere. He's
oh,
got. I don't even
I
want
mean,
to tell you
you
how
have
damaged.
you have the plumbing issue, of course. Then you
Yeah,
have
that's one of them.
drywall and flooring.
Oh, man.
Somebody I talked to in the insurance industry said they pay out more in water damage than fire damage now. Like that's the biggest
Yeah, makes
thing.
sense.
So that brings us to the point of home ownership. And if you rent an apartment, that was the other thing too. Those stories out of those apartments in Riverview that the heat didn't work, and then the pipes burst. These people have so overrated, underrated. Owning your own home, because Lord knows there's both there. So I'm going to start with you. What is your overrated for owning a home?
My overrated is owning the home.
The American dream.
Yeah, the American dream. I mean, this is, next history class is kind of going into that, how U.S. history B, how this became like a thing in the 40s or post World War II when, Levittown, I talked about this before, that became the American dream to have this house in the suburbs. And man, it is, first off, the amount of money it takes of your budget, your personal budget is astronomical. You have to do the repairs on your home or get somebody to do them in the case of me, because I'm not very handy, and on and on and on. So the idea is, I'm not saying, like, I know the purpose of it. I own a home and for a reason that, you build equity and all that stuff, but man, it is exhausting at times. And, I had it. The reason why you thought of this topic, aside from the general, was the specific. What happened to me? I had siding blow off during this awful storm or awful couple of days we had. And I just think overall it is the American dream, but man, it can be tough. And, again, the vast majority of or not vast, but the majority of your income goes to paying for this home. That can give you a lot of headaches. I know it can, you make memories and so forth and so on, but there's a lot that goes with it too that's negative. So that's my overrated.
Yeah, I don't even know how to put it into you. I think you say it really well. You almost want to say owning a home is overrated in general. It seems like you're never ahead
Never.
when you solve problem A, or even if
Yes.
and again, I'm a forward thinking person. I'm a doofus that replaced my sump pump. I remember I had my sump pump replaced before the old one was even broken. It got to be about like 10 or 12 years. I just got a bad vibe. I'm like,
Yeah.
this thing should not last this long. I called, and my buddy Lonnie, Harris Drain Cleaning, free plug, great plumber.
Right. Great guy too.
I told him, I go, hey Lonnie, can I get this is the builder's grade. He's like, Mike, in all my career, I've never replaced a working sump pump ever. And I just said, I just don't want to. I don't want it. It's made it 12 years. I feel like I won the lotto with that. Just put it, and it was like he put a much better one, and now I don't stress about it.
Right.
It just seems like you work and pay to do some sort of upgrade or get something that, not even like an upgrade, just general. Like we put in a couple years ago a new furnace and air conditioner because our air conditioner just wasn't keeping up, and once that's done, something else goes, and it's like you're constantly putting, and then again, you talk about equity and building equity, and most of the time, I mean, I look at like, okay, my grandparents lived in their house till they died, and then they sold it, and then like whatever was left to pay off any bills went to like my parents, and my dad's mom passed away, you know what I mean? So yes, I guess for my kids one day, because like, I mean, I don't know, maybe I would probably downsize, I guess, one day and not need this big of a house, but you still need a place to live. Like,
you gotta have a place to live, right?
So the only thing you're ever doing with that equity is borrowing off of it, seems to pay other bills.
Exactly. You're right. You're even behind the chains on that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a constant. And again, I know there's gonna be some of these finance bros that are going to tell us, oh, if you own real estate and rent, I don't even, when I hear about people like owning a cabin up north, a house on the beach, I don't even like owning one damn house.
Yeah,
I don't want to. Who are these people that want to own? I don't want another house. I don't care. I'll go stay in a hotel. I'll go stay. I do not want to own anything else. Ever.
Man, my Bob, listener to the show, has a house in Chicago and one in Arizona. And that's crazy.
That's two more than I want to own.
Right.
But so I guess that, and again, I'm not trying to put slight on anyone that's working or that's scratching and clawing to save for a down payment. By all means, I get it, but at the same point, I look at like whenever I travel, we talk about traveling into a big city or something. And most people in a big city are renting an apartment, or they're living that life of,
right.
That's just they don't care about equity. They want to live here. This is what they're paying, and unfortunately, because of the current market and the low interest rates, rentals have gone up so much because all these other people have bought places as investments. That's my big fear with renting. It became almost to the point now where owning is almost on par,
right?
But then you're stuck, paying all the bills. So, do you have something underrated?
I do. Okay. My, and this is, I don't know. It really took me some time to think about this.
Can I ask, not to cut you off?
Sure.
Have you ever lived somewhere where you weren't an owner? besides your parents' house? Like, did you rent an apartment, rent a house?
When I was in college, I rented an apartment.
Okay, so I also lived in, not we're not counting dorms because that's really not home, that's not living, but I lived in an apartment prior to buying my first house. So we both have some rental experience.
Yes,
a little bit, but we do have some. But go ahead.
Very little.
Yep.
So my underrated, again, I thought of this, took some time, and what the conclusion I arrived at is I really love cutting the grass. And I don't know if a lot of people believe that's like a more of an obligation and a chore. I actually like doing it. I like the sound of people cutting the grass. I just like doing it. So that's my underrated. And again, I don't know how people feel about that, but for me personally, it's such a, the first time I hear it in the spring, I always like just, it lets me know summer's coming. When I hear somebody else doing it, I'm never the first one out there, but I just like doing it, and the sound of it, me doing it myself, I kind of get lost in the sound when I'm doing it myself. So that's my underrated, cutting the grass.
Okay, I absolutely hate cutting the grass, and I'll plug another ex-Carlson Marauder. Fusco's Lawn Service has cut my grass since I bought my first house in '98. I hate it. Now I'm terribly allergic, like to the point where my eyes will swell up. So that's part of it, but I loathe it. And I already told, when I was doing it as a kid at home, I'm like, I can't wait to make enough one day to pay somebody to do it. And
let me plug Rob Raymond does it too in the summer. So
okay, Rob, there we go. We got two lawn service. I'm gonna I'll tie one. I love shoveling snow and snow blowing though. I don't. That's not really my underrated for home ownership.
No, I got.
I was actually, when I woke up on the Friday, I don't want to say disappointed because I thought like I was going to get to snow blow. I had already filled up my gas tank, the gallon, the side tank, and there was no snow. I had this little mound. I'm like, I'm not even going to waste my time. But it was so cold. I'm glad I didn't have to go out. Right. I don't mind snow blowing if it's like 30, 28, 25 degrees and you go out there and get it done. But my underrated is having an attached garage.
Okay.
With homeownership. You don't apartment living. Yes, you can rent a house and have an attached garage, but when I lived and had an apartment, always parked out. So you think about these days, just the other day when it was like 1 degree, or just going out to your car and having it, and plus your car is just out there in general. Yeah. I know the first thing when we bought our first house behind where you live, our garage was detached. So it was a step up. I had this garage, but still it was always like, oh man, when you came home, I had to unload. And then if I wanted to pull in, and then I know when I finally built the house that we're in now, one of the first things they said is, if you put down this deposit early, you can get a free $10,000 upgrade. And that was going from a 2.5 to a 3-car garage was that. So I immediately put that towards that. And having that 3-car garage attached to your house, other than the pop cans blowing up recently, to me is just having a place to, have your stuff out of the elements, especially in our state here in Michigan. Now, again, if you rent a house, I guess you could have that, but apartment living and condo living, you don't really get that. I also want to say that back in my days in living in an apartment, having smells that are only in your house. People would cook, and you remember, I don't know what it was like where you live, but man, some people would cook some things and it would just destroy the whole, and it would even get into your apartment. That's the one good thing about having your own place. It's your smells. That's it. So if you cook something gross or nasty, that's on you. But you don't have to deal with that in the apartment. But definitely the garage, having a well-covered garage. Again, obviously we're both homeowners. Once you have a family, if you have the opportunity, you're going to want to be in a home just for your kids. But I could definitely see myself in retirement being in a much smaller place. Even a rental. You know what I mean? Even like these apartment sort of houses that have like, you know what I mean? What I'm talking about? That everything's taken care of.
Everything, yes.
I don't see myself being in this house at 70 years of age. It's way too much space. Like my DTE bill for the last month. Why would I want to do that? So, but the American dream. That's what I always drop that line when something goes wrong. So when I'm either opening the checkbook or cleaning up the mess, the American dream. So. We'd love to hear what other people think. It's a love-hate relationship, obviously. So, all right, hot mic take for the week. What do you got for us this last week of 2022?
All right, so this was going to be last week, and I thought to myself, I'll hold off on this one, but I kind of want to do this. So obviously, most of my music that especially that I come on the show with is 80s and 90s. Once in a while, I'll throw a little 2000s in there. But I've recently listening to the alternative rock station come across a band that I always instantly turned, and I am starting to like them, and it's really bizarre. The band is whole, and it's kind of beside the point. The band is whole though, and they had a song, a whole Courtney Love, former Kurt Cobain's ex-wife, and they had a song Malibu that really just, I was like, man, I really like this song. And again, I always just dismissively turned them when I was younger. So I'm wondering if there is any band, musician, rap, whatever out there that the listener just grew to like after a lengthy period of time, because it's been 2 decades since Hole was relevant, you know what I mean? And on the pop scene. So I'm just wondering now, actually I have them, I have this feature on Sirius, I don't know if you have it, where you can actually, get an alert for bands, specific
Yep.
songs.
Yep.
I have Hole as one of my alerts now.
Oh my goodness, you really trained.
They really got to me, and I'm just wondering from the listener, is there anybody that you have come to like that you didn't like at the time, that like I said, for me it's been 2 decades, and all of a sudden now I like this group. So I'm wondering if the listener has any of that themselves. Is there anybody that you have come across that you didn't like before that you all of a sudden like now? And Sirius is the reason why. Sirius Radio.
I'm sure there are some changes. I was a major Taylor Swift hater back in the day, back when like she was first out. Didn't really like, and I'm not saying like I'm a huge fan now that I'm like listening to everything, but like now I'll listen to stuff like the newer, and I'll listen to it, and I don't mind it, I guess is what I was saying.
You were
sort
a
of on
hater,
the same. What's that?
A
I was a
Taylor
hater.
Swift hater? Really?
Oh yeah, I didn't.
You hate, like I get, not like, maybe not like hater though. Really,
I didn't like
strong?
the music, and I didn't like the whole act that went along with it. The whole little "I'm so mod," like to me it was just annoying. But the newer stuff I actually like, and I got to respect her talent. I mean, she's obviously very talented, and my daughter somehow got tickets for this concert that I'm trying to suggest to sell to make a profit on, but she's not listening to me. So my hot mic take, and we've had this discussion before, but I think it's poking its ugly head this last week. Have you been watching the news lately about the Southwest Airlines fiasco, which continues to today? And I see such horror stories as people. I saw it on the U of M parents page. These people had tickets for the Fiesta Bowl, club level seats. They had to sell them because their flights were all canceled, and they are not getting out to Arizona. And again, I came from an airline family. My dad worked for the airline. We all understand weather. We know what the weather was like last Thursday into Friday. We saw what's happened in Buffalo. We get it. There's normal things. But I take interest in this because I sort of want to read these stories. And again, Southwest is sort of like, it's not one of the major carriers. It's one of these cheaper carriers. So you don't get transfer rights onto other airlines. You don't get put up in hotels. You don't get much of anything. It's sort of like Spirit. You gamble with that lower fare ticket, and that's what happens. But what's starting to come out with this is because everyone had problems back on those initial days of this Arctic blast and blizzard. Delta had problems, American had problems. Well, all these other airlines then sort of, weather's moved on, we've moved on. And what we're seeing with this Southwest thing, you're hearing a lot of stuff about how they don't have a hub system and all this, but what we're also seeing is a staffing issue. And this goes back to the American way. We grew up in a time when my parents worked. I wouldn't say American Airlines was bloated with maintenance workers, but they had enough maintenance workers. They had enough flight attendants. They had enough pilots. They weren't making as big of a profit as they liked, but they were staffed. Okay. And if they started losing money, there would be layoffs. Losing money, not making enough money, but losing money to get their workforce to a proper amount. Then all of a sudden, the 80s and 90s sort of switched this mentality of, hey, if we really skim our workforce down to the bare minimum, all right, and work these people to the core, bare minimum, maybe work some overtime, we can make a bigger profit.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what happened everywhere. It happens in hospitals with the nursing staff. It happens in our world. We see it in education. We see it right now. We see it with the airlines. Okay. And now all of a sudden, when something happens out of the ordinary, COVID, weather, this sort of thing, all of a sudden it's like in lack of no pun intended, it's this snowball that gets out of control, and you don't. And you know what? Oh man, maybe if we were a little bloated with a few extra, this era of, oh my goodness, we can't have this many people working and doing this. It's cutting into our profits. It's going to bite people It is
Yes.
biting people. We're seeing it now.
Yes.
In the case of education, in our like we have instances where principals are having to sub. There are no subs backing sub. If there's ever a day in the week where all of a sudden a number of people are ill, just the normal number of absences, there's going to be days where buildings are not going to be operational.
Right.
That day is coming. We've seen
It's
school districts
coming.
go to 4-day work weeks because
Yep.
they don't have the staffing. And again, this goes back to this mentality of profits over everything. Let's keep the workforce. And again, and what they're also finding now is because unemployment's so low, they can't even
Yeah.
get it to where it was slim because people have
Right.
found, I'm going to do these other things. I'm not going to
Yeah.
work my tail off. I'm going to be an independent contractor. I'm going to deliver these things. I'm going to do DoorDash. I'm going to do this and that. I don't need a boss. And we're seeing it now with these airlines are like, oh my goodness, we've kept everything to a minimum. And now they're having a hard time finding pilots.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Well,
And I know,
said,
like,
man.
my cousin's kid just graduated, and then these airlines are starting up their own university, like their own schools to train pilots. They're so desperate now. And think about it. When we were growing up, the aircraft used to have the 3-man crew up front. Now it's to a 2-man crew.
Yeah.
And I get it, technology improves and this and that, but
Sure.
still, we're working at this minimum stretch everywhere. And it's this all just pull up your bootstraps, everyone help out, we'll get through this. Eventually you get to a situation which Southwest is facing right now, and it is a disaster. It's an outright disaster. And I don't know what it's going to take to change it. It's going to take something like this where lives are lost, I think. Police departments are the same way. We talk to police officers around us, and the force is very small, and then these guys just work a ton of overtime.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's just the model. I'm like, well, why not just hire 2 extra cops? Like, well, it's cheaper this way.
When you do things on the cheap, and there's a ton of examples. I'm not going to get any in particular, but when lives are severely impacted, that's the only time and when this stuff is brought to light. But it has happened in so many different instances. It really is. It's a travesty when people are victimized by it, and this is what's happening.
People should be more upset about this situation than they were if the police force normally had 7 guys and now they have 13, and maybe a couple of them, they're not work. The work's just spread. Who cares if the work spread a little more? The American public needs this. We're working to our bones,
right,
under this model of as little staff as possible to save money, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I don't know why. Again, nobody wants a bloated workforce that's like totally outrageous and lazy, but that's not what we're asking for. We're just asking for things to be amply staffed. And I don't know where this idea, I don't know where this tied into the household American dream of, rolling up your sleeves and working your tail off. I don't know why this became the norm, but it is. It's sadly the norm that profits are more important. Let's get as slim of a workforce as possible. And I bet if you asked anybody working in most fields, they're going to tell you the same thing. It's not just educators, it's not just nurses, it's not just police officers, it's not just the airline industry. You go to these stores. I mean, there's like there's like 30 registers, there's 4 registers open. But heaven forbid if there was 12 registers open and everyone had a person in it. Oh my gosh, Kroger would lose their mind because they're actually fully staffed.
Right.
But who am I? Let's just let's all work ourselves into the ground. But again, I feel bad for those people that booked Southwest, and a 1 or 2 day thing is totally normal. I get it. If I was ever traveling by air, weather is totally out of your hands. But when you're talking now, they're saying they're not booking out till like 3 or 4 or 5 days later. I feel bad for those people. A lot of those people had Christmas trips planned, whatever. It's just a shame that we accept it. So, all right, hot mic take. I mean, we did our hot mic takes. What do we got? Lions. So the Lions gave us a typical Lions Christmas Eve present. They need a little help. Any shot? I'm shocked personally. I'm shocked at what happened in Carolina after. I have a feeling right now, as I looked at the AFC playoff picture and the NFC playoff picture, I look at like the Steelers and Lions. They're really going to regret some of their early losses because I think they're better than some of these teams I see above them. Yeah. I know they're better. I know they're better than teams above them. I know that Pittsburgh really regrets the losses to New England and the Jets because I feel like with a healthy squad, they're probably better, but they lost those games. So be it. In the NFC, the NFC South gets a team, so I'm not even going to put them in there, but the Lions are better than the Giants. I truly believe they're better than the Vikings. They should have beat them twice.
Agreed.
But again, that's the way it works. You can't just be good at the end. You got to be good.
No, you got to beat the Seahawks when you have the chance. I don't know. Let's take it 1 game at a time and say they're going to win this weekend. See how things shake out after that. They need help. So I don't want to go. I made a bet with Max. I said they would go at least 3-1 to close the year. So I'm obviously in some trouble on that one. So let's just say they win this weekend, and let's see what happens with Seattle and Washington, and kind of go from there. Because I think it'd be pretty neat, scary neat, but neat nonetheless if that last game with Green Bay means a playoff berth for one or the other. But a number of things has to happen for that to happen. So
yeah, I hope that they, if anything, I just hope they beat Green Bay and don't let them into that playoff spot. So,
yeah.
And then U of M semifinal game that's coming up too. Most people, they're 7.5-point favorite, I think, or 8, or
something like that. Yeah, yeah. I think they'll win. I think it'll be a tough game, but I think they'll win. What do you think about? Well, first off, what's your prediction on that game, and then also the other one? Are we gonna have a Michigan Ohio State national
No,
championship?
I think Michigan's going to win that game by over 10. I think
You think
that's
so?
although I saw somebody on ESPN saying take both of the underdogs in the semifinal games. He really thinks that they're going to be close for the first time in a while. I I don't know, that win in Columbus is just so impressive to me, especially, and like I said, I think people have agreed they're almost better now with Blake Corum out. Like their offense is like free to go. They're not relying on that.
Yeah.
If they get a 3rd and 2, they're not going to just try to stuff the ball down your throat. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think. I think like that Ohio State game also though was a little misleading. I think it was a close game for a half, and then the wheels just came off. And sometimes
Yeah.
that happens. Does it mean they're that many points better than Ohio State? I don't
No.
think so. We've seen games like that. The wheels just come off, and you implode, and it's over.
No.
Um,
Ohio State made some out of character mistakes, personal foul penalties that were
yeah,
right. They were the right
yeah.
call, but
Yeah, I mean, like if they don't get called that, and that pass interference was pass interference. I'm not saying
yeah,
that wasn't pass, but if that doesn't happen, if that pass interference play doesn't happen, it's still a tight game at that point,
yeah, right,
and they don't score that touchdown. You know what I mean? That's a real.
right,
It's just what happens if that doesn't get called?
right,
Like they don't
right.
call that, you're on the road. You just never know. So I think they're going to win, and then I think and I think Georgia's going to win. I think they can beat anybody. I mean, I think they have the talent, obviously, to be. I'm not as scared of Georgia as I was last year. I don't want to, but maybe just because everyone's looked human this year. I just think that and I think their offense is better equipped for that game if they play. They're not going to be afraid to
Yeah,
throw it around. So
right.
um, with that, we will be back next week. You're pretty clear next week, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we should be able to have a Zoom episode, our first episode for 2023. We want to wish everybody Happy New Year, and sorry again about last week, but we hope we will be back for our first episode of 23. Have a great New Year,
Happy New
everyone.
Year.